My name is Tom Denkenwolf, and I serve as a member of the Endowment Committee. Uh-oh. It is coming through. All right. My name is Tom Denkenwolf. What's that? Not loud enough. Okay. Okay. Real close. All right. Usually it picks up a little more strongly. All right. My name is Tom Denkenwolf, and I serve as a member of the Endowment Committee. One thing I love about this congregation is the lovely conversations that occur right after service. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. I want to take a moment to extend a very warm welcome to everyone who's visiting us for the first time. If you're joining us online, please fill out a visitor form in the link in the description. We'd love to connect with you. Part of our mission is to connect bravely, and we're glad you're sharing part of your Sunday here all together. Many of us were once, too, seeking for something larger than ourselves, to which we could belong, a sense of rootedness to hold us as we create meaning together. We do that well here, though not perfectly. In this congregation, we strive not for perfection, but for authenticity and connection. Whether it's your first time in worship with us or your 100th time, we hope that you'll find questions that stretch you, people to befriend you, and liberal religious values that challenge you to join us in loving boldly, living justly, and welcoming radically. I have two announcements to share. After the service today in the Emerson Room is our new member class led by Reverend David and our membership coordinator, Irene. Lunch is provided, and even if you haven't RSVP'd, you are very warmly welcome to join. And 2 weeks from today, on Sunday, January 29th, our new Racial Justice Task Force is hosting lunch and leading a congregational conversation about the ways economics and race are intertwined in this country. It's part of a larger initiative from the Boulder NAACP, where groups around the country are reading author Heather McGee's book, The Sum of Us, and considering ways in which a zero-sum mindset harms us all. We have some copies available in the listening room, but even if you don't have a chance to read the book, you're warmly welcome.
Breathe deep and be here now. If you have come into this house hurting today, wounded in spirit, rest here. If you have come cut by 1,000 tiny aggressions of the world, injured by violence or loss, rest here. This house is strong enough to hold it all. This community is strong enough to hold you all. That which is greater than you, God and love, life itself, is strong enough to hold you up. Rest easy. We are all of us hurting and all of us hoping. We are all of us wounded and all walking together. And with broken-hearted, ferocious strength, we are none of us closing our eyes to the difficult truths of our world. On this MLK Sunday, exactly as we are in this moment, an invitation echoes when Dr. King declares, "There are certain things in our nation and in the world to which I am proud to be maladjusted, and to which I hope all people of goodwill will be maladjusted until the good society is realized. I never intend to become adjusted to segregation and discrimination. I never intend to become adjusted to religious bigotry. I never intend to adjust myself to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few. I never intend to adjust myself to the madness of militarism, to the self-defeating effects of physical violence. It is 60 years later since those words. It is 350 years later. It is 2,000 years later. It is the whole of human history behind us, and still we are struggling to make real love's aspiration for justice, walking towards a land we may not reach. And so we gather this morning to renew our commitment to be more ethical than expedient, to be more courageous than cautious, to be love's hands at work in the world. Deborah's going to teach us some new music to carry us on into it. And in the singing, let me invite you to worry less about crisp precision and perfection, and instead to let the music give form to your hurt and your hope.
The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The land is holy, and so are we. The land is holy, and so are we. The land is holy, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be.
This weekend, we celebrate the life of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who in the simplest form preached and taught and organized people to say that life in our country ought to be equal. But he also said that equal doesn't mean everyone gets just exactly the same things, and equal doesn't mean everything is just the same for everyone. And let me explain, and in order to do this, I need a volunteer who is under 5'3" in shoes and is comfortable on a stepladder. Yeah, Caitlin. Thank you. And Ben, I have a tall person already handy. So come on up, and you'll see behind, if you're a newcomer, we don't usually string money up in the back of the chancel, but here is our money. And Caitlin, I'm going to invite you, just go ahead, reach up and grab one. That's good, but could you reach a little higher, please? Yeah. Well, I don't understand it. There is a level playing field here. So, Ben, why don't you go ahead and grab $1? And in fact, Caitlin, you can get as many as you'd like. No. Not you, Ben. Just Caitlin. All right. So the point here being is that these two are equal. They are standing on exactly the same ground. No one has an advantage here. They just showed up exactly like they showed up. Right? You're all equal, but you also can't get what you want or need. What if I give a step stool? Actually, Tom, will you grab that step stool right there? Thank you. Bring it over. And Caitlin, can you climb up and grab just one of those now? Awesome. All right. This works. We're still gonna make this work. No, you hang on to those for the sec. So we've solved the problem, right? The problem is that everyone who needs a step stool has a step stool now, right? Fixed. But what if the problem isn't that there's a step stool needed? What if the problem is just that the string is too high in the first place? That, in, again, its simplest form, is what Dr. King said. He said, when the whole game is unfair, when the whole thing is rigged, it's not enough to help one person win, same as the tall one. You have to think sideways and find a way to beat the game for everybody. Caitlin, will you climb up and cut that string down in the first place? There you go. Thank you. I borrowed the dollars from someone else, actually. I didn't have cash on me. Thank you. Our work as people who believe in fairness and justice and are committed to it, our work as people who believe that everyone is important, everyone has inherent worth and dignity and value, is not to just make a few short people taller, but to break a system that makes all of us short.
The chalice is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition. It is a cup of life, sustenance to quench our spirit's thirst, a cup of celebration and resolve, a flame of hope, a light to warm our souls and guide us home. In symbol of this, we light the chalice this morning. We are a promise-making, a promise-breaking, and a promise-remaking people. We are called not to be perfect, but to be faithful. In that spirit, each week we speak our covenant aloud, all together. It is a reminder of the promises we make in this gathered community. In person and online, will you join me as one as we say our covenant? We gather in fellowship to speak truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and to seek the truth divine. So be it.
In this congregation, our spiritual practices take so many different forms. We have theists and atheists and Buddhists and Christians and naturalists and pagans and so many others sitting side by side in the pews. This is not by accident, but by design. We're united not because we believe a particular list of things just the same way, but because we share a common set of values and a commitment to spiritual growth. So there's no particular right way that we're supposed to do spiritual practice. It's not that prayer is right and sitting is wrong. It's not that calling the four directions is the right way to do this and a walking meditation of attention is wrong. One reason I return to poetry often in our meditations is that it's another path that these other practices do, a kind of, at its best, and if we engage with it, because this is active, a way to open a certain internal door, to open a door inside ourselves, a heart door, a compassion door, a wonder door that you can step through into a rediscovery of gratitude and awe, that you can step through into your own grief that you've shut behind it, into the compassion for others that we sometimes wall up to make it through our days. I invite you into that as I share these words for meditation by Elizabeth Alexander, this called Praise Song for the Day. Breathe deep. Find a comfortable way to sit so your body doesn't intrude too much into your spirit. Praise Song for the Day. Each day we go about our business, walking past each other, catching each other's eyes or not, about to speak or speaking. All about us is noise. All about us is noise and bramble thorn and din, each one of our ancestors on our tongues. Someone is stitching up a hem, darning a hole in a uniform, patching a tire, repairing the things in need of repair. Someone is trying to make music somewhere, with a pair of wooden spoons on an oil drum, with cello, boombox, harmonica, voice. A woman and her son wait for the bus. A farmer considers the changing sky. A teacher says, "Take out your pencils. Begin." We encounter each other in words, spiny or smooth, whispered or declaimed, words to consider, reconsider. We cross dirt roads and highways that mark the will of someone, and then others who said, "I need to see what's on the other side. I know there's something better down the road. We need to find a place where we are safe. We walk into that which we cannot yet see." Say it plain that many have died for this day. Sing the names of the dead who brought us here, who laid the train tracks, raised the bridges, picked the cotton and the lettuce, built brick by brick the glittering edifices they would keep clean and work inside. A praise song for struggle, praise song for the day, praise song for every hand-lettered sign, the figuring it out at kitchen tables. Some live by love thy neighbor as thyself. Others by first do no harm or take no more than you need. What if the mightiest word is love? Love beyond marital, filial, national love that casts a widening pool of light. Love with no need to preempt grievance. In today's sharp sparkle, this winter air, anything can be made, any sentence begun, on the brink, on the brim, on the cusp. Praise song for walking forward in that light. We'll be together in silence for 7 breaths. None of us are alone, though it may not feel that way. But there's a thread which weaves through this gathered community of broken hearts. There is a fiber of compassion which comes from knowing and holding and transforming suffering. And it ties us together. It's this filament connecting every heart that breaks with joy and breaks with sorrow. Each week in the service, we set aside time in ritual to make visible those unseen interconnections of hopes and cares. And in a moment, as the music begins, I'll invite you to come forward as you feel moved. And as you wait, as you move, let your thinking quiet and your breath steady. Call to mind the sorrows and the joys, everything that weighs you down and lifts you up. Silently take a stone in token of everything on your heart and place it in the earth, resting in something larger than any of us. A community connected by the concerns we carry. To all these gathered cares, we hold in the love of this community Jack Rummel. Lynn passed away in December. Please keep them close to your hearts. We hold in love Bill and Sharon Ballou, the joy of having grandchildren visiting from Sweden and Alaska. Joy of connection. And from Fred Cole, who lifts up the passing of Reverend Tom Steers, for all these joys and all these sorrows, for everything that we hold in the silence of our heart. Amen.
There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my power. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my voice. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my power. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my voice. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my
to stand
power.
inside
There's
our
a wheel
hearts.
that
It's
is turning,
turning,
calling
we're
me into
learning
my
to
voice.
stand in love.
There's a wheel that
It's
is turning,
turning,
calling
we're
me into
learning
my
to stand
power.
inside
There's a
our
wheel
hearts.
that
It's
is turning,
turning,
calling
we're
me into
learning
my
to stand in
voice.
love.
There's a wheel that
It's
is turning,
turning,
calling
we're
me
learning
into my
to stand
power.
in
There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my
to stand
There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my power. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my voice. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my power. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my voice. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my power. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my voice. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my power. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my voice. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my power. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my voice. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my power. There's a wheel that is turning, calling me into my voice. I will not be silent. I will not be silent. I will not be silent. I will not be silent.
In April of 1963, a campaign began in Birmingham, Alabama, to bring attention to the deep and bitter segregation in that city. The preceding 2 decades saw 50 bombings of African American homes, businesses, and churches. Yeah, how many of you here were born after 1963? For me, growing up after that, it's almost inconceivable to think of that pace of bombings and burnings. It's so far outside of my experience of what's even possible. 50 bombings in 2 decades. In 1960, The city of Birmingham had 350,000 people and 0 black firefighters or bus drivers or cashiers in the stores. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference organized a nonviolent campaign that would draw the eyes of the world. Thank you, Tom. And the eye of national politics to Birmingham. They organized sit-ins that prompted mass arrests. The city got an injunction to ban all public protest, so the SCLC and Dr. King and other organizers trained students. They trained college students and high school students and even elementary school students to walk nonviolently in groups of 50 at a time from 16th Street Baptist Church to City Hall. They were arrested and the jails were filled, but not before the police department used water hoses and attack dogs on students, children, bystanders. When Martin Luther King was arrested, the organizers did not bail him out of jail. He wanted to stay in, strategizing correctly that staying there would shine a brighter light of media attention and political attention on the city. And while in jail, he read from a newspaper a letter from 8 local clergymen. They deplored what they called his outside agitation. And they urged negotiation and legal process rather than protest. Demonstration, they said, was untimely and unwise. Pursue change in the courts. Follow all the laws until then. Why protest? Why go out into the streets? Why disrupt the ordinary function of law and order? Why invite the police response? Why invite the arrests? Why inconvenience the citizens of Birmingham? Why upset the routines of work and shopping? Why bring children out of school to be arrested? Why take up the time of emergency workers? Demonstration, they said, was untimely and unwise. Pursue change in the courts. Follow all the laws until then. I dwell on this because if you're comfortable, it's not obvious those white clergymen were wrong. It's obvious in history. It's obvious looking back at Birmingham in 1963. It's less obvious today. I've heard those questions asked. If you don't experience what people of color experience, if you don't see it, if you don't know it is happening right here and now, that it is not history, then these questions are sharp. They're real. This letter from a Birmingham jail was Dr. King's response, and I want to spend some time with it, some time with his words, some time to hear directly from the man we so often honor at a distance. As one poet says, now that he is safely dead, let us praise him. To hear from a man we make tame and historic rather than radical and present. Here's what he says. My dear fellow clergymen, I think I should indicate why I am here in Birmingham, since you have been influenced by the view which argues against outsiders coming in. I'm in Birmingham because injustice is here. I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I can't sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what's happening in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. And whatever affects one directly affects all of us indirectly. And never again can we afford to live with the narrow, the provincial outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere in its bounds. You deplore the demonstrations taking place in Birmingham, but your statement, I am sorry to say, fails to express a similar concern for the conditions that brought about the demonstrations. I'm sure that none of you would want to rest content with the superficial kind of social analysis that merely deals with effects and does not grapple with the underlying causes. It is unfortunate that demonstrations are taking place in Birmingham. But it is even more unfortunate that the city's white power structure left the community with no alternative. And you may well ask, why direct action? Why sit-ins, marches, and so forth? Isn't negotiation a better path? Well, you're quite right in calling for negotiation. Indeed, this is the very purpose of direct action. Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and foster such a tension that a community which has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront these issues. It seeks to so dramatize the issue it can no longer be ignored. My citing of the creation of tension as part of the work of the nonviolent resistor may sound shocking, but I must confess that I am not afraid of the word tension. I have earnestly opposed violent tension, but there is a type of constructive, nonviolent tension which is necessary for growth. We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. I have yet to engage in a direct action campaign that was well-timed. Right? That was well-timed in the view of those who have not suffered unduly from the disease of segregation. And for years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in my ear with a piercing familiarity. The wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see with one of our distinguished jurists that justice too long delayed is justice denied. We have waited more than 340 years for our constitutional, our God-given rights, and perhaps it is easy for those who have never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say wait. But when you have seen vicious mobs lynch your mothers and fathers at will and drown your sisters and brothers on a whim, when you have seen hate-filled policemen curse, kick, and even kill your black brothers and sisters, when you have seen the vast majority of your 20 million brothers smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society, when you have to concoct an answer for a 5-year-old son who is asking, "Daddy, why do white people treat colored people so mean?" When you are harried day and haunted by night by the fact that you are living constantly at a tiptoe stance, never quite knowing what to expect next, when you're plagued with inner fears and outer resentments, when you are forever fighting a degenerating sense of nobodiness, then you understand why we find it difficult to wait. There comes a time when the cup of endurance runs over, and men are no longer willing to be plunged into the abyss of despair. I dwell on this. I appreciate this. I read these words at length because these are not words about history, but about the present, too. It's a call and a reminder, unpleasant though it may be for so many of us to face it, a reminder that we often speak as the heroes of our own stories and rarely know ourselves to be the bystanders in someone else's story. We ask reasonable-sounding questions, and they really do sound reasonable until we understand how deeply unreasonable they are in someone else's life. Dr. King continues. He says, I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice. And that when they fail in this purpose, they become the dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress. I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that the present tension is a necessary phase of transition from an obnoxious negative peace to a substantive and positive peace in which all men will respect the dignity and worth of human personality. And actually, we who engage in nonviolent direct action are not the creators of tension. We're merely bringing to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. We bring it out in the open where it can be seen and dealt with like a boil that can never be cured so long as it's covered up, but must be opened with all its ugliness to the natural medicines of air and light. Injustice must be exposed with all the tensions its exposure creates to the light of human conscience and to the air of national opinion before it can be cured. Last Sunday, asking what it means to hope, I shared words from the author Rebecca Solnit, who says that hope is an embrace of the unknown and the unknowable. Hope is the belief that what we do matters, even though how and when it may matter, who and what it may impact, are not things we can know ahead of time. The very first words of nonviolent resistance in this country were from Aidan Ballou. He was a Universalist minister and later a Unitarian minister in the mid-19th century. Ballou founded a utopian community called Hopedale. It was a village of 200 where everyone was bound together by a covenant, by the promises, the commitments they made to each other. A covenant which read in part, he does not go halfway with this, I hold myself bound never under any pretext whatsoever to kill, assault, beat, torture, enslave, rob, oppress, persecute, defraud, corrupt, slander, revile, injure, envy, or hate any human being, even my worst enemy. For Ballou, our obligation was not to the state which enforced its laws with violence, but to a higher moral law. And that covenant kept on going. It continued. I hold myself bound never to indulge in self-will, bigotry, love of preeminence, covetousness, deceit, profanity, idleness, or an unruly tongue. Never to justify myself in a known wrong. It is maybe not a surprise that as a community, Hopedale was a total failure. They could not get the economics to work. They couldn't get the relationships to work. That higher moral law was exacting and aspirational and unapologetically radical. I hope there was room in that for lots of grace. So there we are. We leave Aidan Ballou, the nonviolent dreamer, having failed to establish utopia on earth. And after all, the 19th century is actually full of experiments like this. There are dozens of these utopian communities where people separate themselves from society and try to figure it all out. And that could be the end of the story. But for Leo Tolstoy, having found fame and success, the great Russian writer, and a vocation as a reformer as well as writer, he enters his 50s and begins this deep crisis of conscience and purpose. And he reads Aidan Ballou's book, and he starts corresponding with Ballou. He discovers this core message, Tolstoy does, of what Ballou calls the law of love, which requires a renunciation of all forms of violence. And Tolstoy writes about this eloquently in the closing decades of the 19th century, and that could be the end of the story. But one of Tolstoy's readers, living alone at the time in Pretoria, South Africa, was a young lawyer, 24 years old, Mohandas Gandhi. And for Gandhi, Tolstoy's idea of nonviolence became central to his life and teaching, to his whole way of being in the world. Nonviolence, not just as what you act on, but the way you conduct yourself inside. And that could be the end of the story, but Martin Luther King read the words of Gandhi and became convinced that nonviolent direct action was the only viable strategy to make change in this country. But more than that, nonviolence was the only way to make change and to live in this country that day by day would grind you into dust, the only way to do it without losing your soul and yourself along the way. So there are two stories you can tell about Aiden Ballou. One of them is a failed utopian dreamer whose business partners abandon him. And the other is the story of a man whose idea, once set free in the world, grows and thrives and animates movements for justice from Birmingham to Boulder. And that I hold tight to, hope as the embrace of the unknown and unknowable, hope that change will come, that defeat is temporary, though justice is not inevitable, that what we do matters, even if we don't get to know how or where beforehand. And hand in hand, I put that with Dr. King's counsel, who says, softly or loudly, gently or sharply, who says to each one of us, not 60 years ago, but in this room today, that we must begin by paying attention, by asking ourselves, what in my comfort do I not see? And then going to work. Amen.
Do you ever wonder if there's something you can do to make the world a sacred space and live in truth? If you watch the birds, if you watch the bees, when you feel the sun, when you feel the breeze, you'll see they know what they're doing. You'll see, ho, 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 what about you?
What about you?
What about you?
What about you?
Can you feel what you're doing? Can you be what you're given? Step completely as a warrior of love. Walk with dignity, fight for love. Step completely as a warrior of love. Walk with dignity, fight for love. Step completely as a warrior of love. Calling all warriors with dignity, fight for love. The earth completely as a warrior is calling all warriors with dignity, fight for love. Now I know
Times can get real hard.
Are you
willing to stand apart
from the mess that we have made? It's up to you. What will you create? When you keep looking, take the time
time to pray. Spirit in your hand,
Then you will understand. You gotta
step completely as a warrior of love. Walk with dignity, fight for love. Step completely as a warrior of love. Walk with dignity, fight for love. Step completely as a warrior of love. Walk with dignity, fight for love. Step completely as a warrior of love. Walk with dignity, fight for love.
I don't know how to love when all I see is hate. I don't know how to rule. I feel so alone. I don't know how to love when all I see is hate.
Do it anyway.
I don't know where to go. I feel so alone.
Love anyway.
I don't know how to love when all I see is hate.
Do it anyway.
I don't know where to go. I feel so alone.
Love anyway.
I don't know where when all I see is hate.
Do it anyway.
I feel so alone.
Step completely as a warrior of love.
Yeah.
Walk with dignity,
Yeah, yeah.
fight for love.
Oh.
Step completely as a warrior of love. Walk with dignity, fight for love. Step completely as a warrior of
He's
love.
calling all warriors
With dignity, fight for love. Step completely as a warrior of
He's
love.
calling all warriors.
With dignity, fight for love.
The
Earth is calling all warriors.
Listen to the birds. Listen to the breeze.
The earth is calling all warriors.
Yeah, she's calling you.
The earth is calling all warriors.
Will you answer? Will you answer? Will you answer?
The earth is calling all warriors.
Will you answer? Will you answer?
The earth is calling all warriors.
Listen to the birds. Listen to the breeze.
The earth is calling all warriors.
Ooh,
Fight for love.
This week, our offering plate goes to the Mountaintop, a UU BIPOC community. The Mountaintop is a Unitarian Universalist organization of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and mixed-race, multiracial individuals. They meet to worship and enjoy fellowship with other UUs of color. The Mountaintop was founded in 2020 by UU religious professionals in the Colorado Front Range community. They set out to create a safe and empowering space for UU BIPOC individuals and families in the region. It quickly became clear, however, that the need for this space had a much wider geographic reach than they could have ever imagined. Community members represent regions throughout the entire United States, as well as Canada and the United Kingdom. The Mountaintop also honors the religious professionals of the Colorado UUs United for Racial Justice, where the first conversations about creating a new space for UUs of color first began, and whose financial support made this community possible. So, why is this organization called the Mountaintop? Many religions feature stories about encountering the divine on the mountain, To stand in a place like that is a profound and inspiring experience. Looking out in any direction brings a view of the land sweeping out for miles on end. It offers a new, transformative perspective on the world around us. The mountaintop is a vision where a world, third time. The mountaintop's vision is a world where BIPOC members in our UU communities are welcomed and celebrated as fully whole human beings. I invite you to give as generously as you are able. For those online, you can use the QR code or find a link in the video description. For those gathered in person, you can scan the QR code or make a donation as the ushers now pass the baskets. May our gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace and love to the Boulder community and the wider world.
Gratitude for your generosity. I hope you'll continue this conversation 2 weeks from now when we gather after the service for lunch and to talk about the sum of us, to look more closely at ways that race and economics are tied together and tie people down in this country. I hope you'll be a part of that conversation then. 53 years ago tomorrow, Dr. King charged his congregation at Ebenezer Baptist with these words, "And the passing years have not dulled the keenness of their vision or the brightness of their call to us." He said, this hour in history needs a dedicated circle of transformed nonconformists. Our planet teeters on the brink of atomic annihilation. Dangerous passions of pride, hatred, and selfishness are enthroned in our lives. Truth lies prostrate on the rugged hills of nameless cavalries, and men do reverence before false gods of nationalism and materialism. The saving of our world will come not through the complacent adjustment of the conforming majority, but through the creative maladjustment of a non-conforming minority. May we never adjust. May we never conform to a status quo comfortable with inequality. Our worship ends and our service begins again. Will you rise in body or spirit? We'll close in song.